understand 20th century war literature, you have to understand war itself from the 20th century, and there were a lot of them. Before I start, my presentation right here is called The Cause and Effect of War. How war can and has been the product of a domino effect over history. Before I go into presentation, anybody here know what the first war in the 20th century was? The biggest first, you know how it started. What started it?
People fight.
Anybody?
Oh, was it? Wait, I have. Was it Hitler? Crazy.
Crazy.
No. Anybody else? Okay. It started with one simple thing. A sandwich. Okay? Are evil. God gives to humanity a convenient form of support food groups. Started the global conflict of the early 20th century. How, you ask me? How did a sandwich that's been treating man so great for ages cause such death and suffering? Has anybody been asking that? Of course, yes. How? Well, here's why. A man named Gavrilo Princip, a Yugoslav nationalist, wanted to kill this man right here, Mr. Man, Franz Ferdinand. And Franz Ferdinand was an archduke of the great country of Austria-Hungary. Now it's just Austria-Hungary. But back then it was one country. And he wanted to kill him with nothing else than a humble grenade thrown at his car. The problem was, back in 1914, no, what was it? Yeah, never mind. 1914, grenades took 15 seconds to detonate, and he wanted to throw it at his car. So he threw it at his car, and by the time it exploded, it was long gone. And killing everybody except Franz Ferdinand. What about the sandwich? I know how that goes after a failed assassination in a good sandwich. And apparently my man got a sandwich. And as you see right here on our map, this is Sarajevo, where Franz Ferdinand was eventually assassinated. So there's a lot of streets. You see this? It's not a small town. It's not, Roseville. So, those lucky for him, Gavrilo Princip, being the lucky man that he is, he happened to have Franz Ferdinand drive right, Franz Ferdinand, who was better, drove right past him on the one block he was getting his sandwich. He pulled out his pistol, shot him, and he was dead. Consequence of this. As I told you, Gavrilo Princip was a Yugoslav nationalist. However, Austria-Hungary, where Franz Ferdinand was, they didn't blame Yugoslavia or any other country except Serbia. So they decided to blame Serbia. Why not? Whatever. And over time, they decided to bring in other countries. And in the end, we were divided into two groups by the end of the war: the Allies, Great Britain, France, Belgium, Serbia, Japan, Montenegro, and the Central Powers: Belgium, the Ottoman Empire, Italy, and the like. And this all resulted in World War I. Why? Because of a sandwich. Now, we separate ourselves from the sandwich for a minute, and we see that, okay, World War I started, okay, let's not say it's the sandwich, that you might think that's silly, right? It could have been, why they think it was a sandwich, you go too small. Well, and the large scale is because of the death of a man. Has anybody here, other than me, wondered why doesn't Batman already kill the Joker and he doesn't have to run around in spandex every day? Thing is, Batman doesn't kill him. Does anybody know the origin of Batman?
Yeah.
What happened? What happened to his parents? They got shot. They both died. and he witnessed the tragedy that death can cause to not one person, but a whole community. And sure, you can kill the Joker, and he won't have to run around in Spanish and his butt won't shake. But it will still cause a great ripple effect by the death of one man. Showing that, and exactly what happened in World War I. And if you want to go into larger, World War I caused the countries to go into debt. The debt caused Hitler to be elected by the desperate German people. Hitler caused World War II. World War II caused the United States and the Russians to come out as superpowers. That hostility between the two superpowers caused the Cold War. The Cold War caused the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the war, and several other wars in the satellite Soviet countries. For example, Kosovo. The Jews, scared by what happened to them because of Hitler, they went to Israel. The occupation of Israel is what has also caused one of the key factors of the Middle Eastern conflict. And from that, and since we as Americans and all the Western society has helped Israel because of their fear of Europe and occupying Israel, Middle Eastern countries have not been so great to us. And out of that case, a young man by the name of Osama bin Laden has come up and caused, again, an orchestrator of thousands of murders and injuries over the past 20 years. Again, we go back to the Cold War. We're in the Middle East. We go back to the Cold War. The Taliban. Does anybody know how the Taliban was founded or who founded it? Nobody. Does anybody know where they got the funding from in the first place? Us. We funded the Taliban to fight Soviet troops. The Soviet troops, we funded them to fight Soviet troops during the Cold War, which was a result of World War II, which was a result of the World War I. So now again, you're seeing how the Batman analogy is related to the devastation that one simple death of one man can cause for a whole century. We're still fighting the Taliban right now, and they're a product of the one death of one man, when you think about it. And what I'm going to end with this right now is the devastation of the world over one century from the death of one man is proportionate, if not less than, the great pain dealt by one community over the death of one soldier or one civilian over war. War, once you start, cannot be stopped. And that's what I've proved today. One man died, and we're still dealing with the consequences over 100 years later. And from now you guys understand the gravity of 20th century wars. We go into the 20th century war literature.
All right. So,
okay, war in the 20th century has always been remembered and never forgotten. Brutal wars such as the Vietnam War and World War II made a big impact on the world as a whole. War affected everyone, including the civilians, not just the soldiers involved in the war. The government and the country. No matter how much you want peace, there will never be a world without war existing. Again, because war has already been started and it has already ended. It didn't end it. It keeps on going. I told you we cannot stop it, and you've seen how it cannot be stopped. The world wars, being that an entire race was almost wiped from the face of the earth because of it, the Holocaust, and not just the Holocaust with the Jews, it was Gypsies, Catholics, anybody who didn't believe in one ideology was exterminated. In a war, the soldiers don't think about winning. They think about survival. That's their personal goal, and that's what they fight to accomplish. What the government doesn't consider is that people go through a lot of hell when war begins, not just soldiers and the government, but the home front as well.
Alright, the authors that I chose was Tim O'Brien, George Olson, and Estella. But I chose these authors because they gave a vivid description of what war was like with a soldier. And from my opinion, I believe that Tim O'Brien was the most valued author in my paper, and that's why I use him. That's why he's on here under the picture. But he was a soldier. He fought in the Vietnam War, and from his viewpoint, he gave war an even worse look for itself than what he had described. War to him almost made him insane, in this quote here, there were no thoughts about killing. Like I said, it's about survival. And he said that when he blew him up with a grenade, it was just to make him go away. He didn't count it as killing. He just wanted him to leave. Which also lead up to the quote here about the combat Bible. Kill or be killed. Aside from that, I think from his description and from the other prophets' description, that war is a hell zone. And in this zone, there are no rules.
The worst to remember, we already talked about the worst. Okay, well, two of the biggest ones with the biggest American casualties, and our project was not on wars as a whole, just American, war from an American perspective, and these are two of the biggest wars in the 20th century that we fought. The Vietnam War wasn't for our own protection, it was for protection of an ideology from spreading. It was during the Cold War that we didn't want Soviet influence to spread, and it wasn't for our protection, but protection of the Vietnamese, and possibly the rest of the Asian countries, so that they wouldn't have to be ruled eventually by the Soviets, or any influence of communism. And then World War II was the same. The two countries we fought, Germany and Japan, they were countries that wanted to spread, wanted to impose their own ideology on other people. So much that they put their too much we focused on just the Germans. Just the Germans were very cool people. When you get into the Pacific front, the Japanese were so oppressive of and put so much ideology into their the people they ruled over, that when the Americans came to liberate them, they actually jumped and killed themselves because of the ideology that the Japanese put into them, that the Americans were the evil ones. So much was the brainwashing during that time, and we lost millions of bodies of Americans back in then, 50 to 70 million soldiers back then, and in the Vietnam War. It's also pretty bloody, but yeah, bloody. That's it. Wait a minute.